In a world that never stops talking, you may think you live outside the noise or that it does not affect you, but over time it becomes a part of you, forms and influences what you think, do, and say. It becomes your internal compass and reflex. You stop noticing it the same way a person stops noticing the endless hum of a machine in the background. Then one day you sit in silence and feel unsettled, restless, and anxious. The feeling that you need or are missing something. This is the result of you being trained and conditioned by the constant stream of noise. You call it being informed and aware. My name is Jerry. This is a former hermit and a podcast. Welcome. If you are here for noise, opinion-driven rage, and political spin, you are in the wrong place. This podcast series is a place to slow down, find silence, recover, learn how to think, discern, live in truth, and quiet enough to hear your own thoughts. For anyone of faith, secular, lost, confused, broken, in pain, or searching. Anyone who is exhausted from being overwhelmed, overstimulated, and distracted. For anyone who feels the only way forward is not louder, more opinion-driven rage and information, but clarity with a sense of purpose, to live with conviction and at peace. You do not need to share my worldview to benefit. But you do need honesty, because truth does not cooperate with self-deception. I talk about something that modern culture does not tolerate or reward, knowing how to think, not what to think. Objective truth, self-awareness, authenticity, submitting to the authority of sound reason, and knowing your why. Looking through a secular lens and a Catholic Christian lens because both matter. Two lenses, different vocabulary, same pursuit. Truth. In today's show, I want to talk about how the constant stream of noise affects a person over time. I want to begin by identifying what noise really is. When people say noise, they usually mean sound, a loud room, a busy street, a television, or radio. But the most damaging noise in modern culture is not volume. It is a constant input of noise. When I refer to noise, I'm talking about the steady stream of endless information and commentary that does not allow you time to process or comprehend information. The manufactured urgency when everything is presented as immediate and extreme. The emotional manipulation that rewards outrage, fear, envy, lust, deceit, division, and resentment. A culture that trains you to react, judge instantly, and speak loudly and fast. Over time, this changes the way you understand and relate to reality. You begin to live in a world of impressions, not truth, reactions, not thinking, performance rather than presence. In this current environment, this is done intentionally to make it impossible to process and think. Looking at noise through the secular lens, what noise does to the mind. Noise fractures attention. Attention is not a minor skill. It is the steering wheel for your life. When your attention is fractured by constant interruptions and being overwhelmed, you lose the ability to absorb, think, and slowly process information. You lose the ability to listen patiently, process and think in sequence and complex ideas and concepts. Remain mentally present, focused, and in the moment when interacting with other people. Restlessness, the inability to stay with your own discomfort long enough to learn from it. Noise trains the mind for fragments, headlines, clips, hot takes, reactions, posts, and notifications. You feel mentally tired and exhausted, not only tired from doing too much, but from being mentally and emotionally overloaded, overwhelmed, and distracted while trying to process the constant noise. Noise creates chronic agitation. When the nervous system is constantly stimulated, it begins to treat life as an emergency. This will manifest in different ways: irritability, poor sleep, a lack of mental focus, and the inability to settle, feeling uninformed even when there is nothing happening. As the process continues, you lose the sense of calm that is your normal baseline. Calm begins to feel unfamiliar. Stillness begins to feel unsafe. Silence begins to feel like a problem, a void that needs to be filled. Noise weakens the ability to reason because reasoning requires time and patience. The constant stream of noise trains the opposite. It trains for speed, certainty, simplification, tribal thinking, and emotional reaction. A person begins to confuse emotional intensity with truth, popularity with being correct, outrage with virtue, certainty with sound reason. One of the most profound failures of modern culture, a person can be intelligent and become unreasonable. Noise erodes self-awareness because self-awareness requires time, space, and solitude. When every spare moment is filled, you lose the ability to hear your own thoughts and interior movements and conscience. What you want, fear, avoid, love, and what you are becoming. You become a stranger to yourself while still functioning. You can perform while losing yourself. Noise makes you easy to manipulate. This is not an accusation. It is a pattern. A person who cannot focus can be led. A person who cannot tolerate silence can be sold. A person who lives on reaction can be steered by whoever or whatever provokes the strongest reaction. Noise not only exhausts you, but it reshapes you. Looking at noise through the Catholic Christian lens, the person is not only a mind and body, but a soul, made for truth and love, created in the likeness of God. Noise damages the soul because it crowds out the interior movements where God speaks, where conscience clarifies and virtue is formed. Noise dulls the conscience. Conscience does not shout, it whispers. Noise makes the whisper impossible to hear. This becomes dangerous because you become desensitized and can no longer see the objective truth. You begin to rationalize, excuse, and avoid. You live your life driven by impulse instead of principle. In spiritual language, the heart becomes divided. Noise trains disordered love which is contradictory to the Catholic Christian tradition theology, which instructs about ordered love. To love what is rightly owed your love. St. Augustine of Hippo, one of the greatest medieval philosophical minds in human history, writes about the order of love. He neither loves what is ought not to love, nor fails to love what he ought to love, nor loves that more which ought to be loved less. God is to be loved for his own sake. And if God is to be loved more than any man, each man ought to love God more than himself. It is a brief but true definition of virtue to say it is the order of love. Temperance is love keeping itself entire and incorrupt for God. Prudence is love making a right distinction between what helps it towards God and what might hinder it. Augustine's basic structure is to love God supremely, love people for God's sake, and order every lesser good beneath that highest good. To the contrary, modern culture feeds on and drives the constant stream of noise and trains disordered love, comfort over holiness, stimulation over meaning, approval over integrity, winning over understanding, distraction over prayer, impulse over discipline. The soul becomes restless and craves constant satisfaction, grows impatient with reality. A profound problem in modern culture is a person's inability to endure ordinary life. Without feeding on constant instant gratification, a person feels profound sadness, emptiness, and loneliness. Noise starves prayer, silence, and communion. Prayer requires presence, and presence requires stillness. Noise does not make people hate prayer, it makes people incapable of prayer. When a person says, I cannot pray, what they mean is, I cannot be still. This becomes spiritual malnutrition. The soul begins to live on substitutes, information instead of wisdom, entertainment instead of joy, outrage instead of purpose, noise instead of God. Noise increases temptation through exhaustion. When you are mentally exhausted, you lose the ability to focus and become less vigilant. Noise exhausts the mind, breaks down resistance, and weakens the free will to choose to do what is right and not do what is wrong. It becomes easier to give in to temptation, the need to escape reality, become bitter, angry, a deeper appetite for lust, envy, self-pity, anger, and despair. Sin becomes habitual, readily accepted, and encouraged to cope. Sin is seen as right, normal, and necessary. In the process, the weakened free will gives in to the desire for vice quicker, easier, and more often, not because you choose to do wrong in one specific moment or event, but because over time you did not choose to do what is right in each specific moment, event. There are common long-term outcomes if a person remains in the stream for years without boundaries. Over time, a person becomes reactive, responds instantly and feels strongly, but does not and cannot process information. A person becomes fragmented, holding conflicting ideas without understanding. Becomes a different person, one person in public and another person in private. Becomes driven by impulses and emotional rage rather than sound reason. The person becomes cynical because cynicism feels like intelligence, but it is often just disappointment of idealism. A person becomes numb, not calm, not peaceful, numb. Stop caring deeply because it causes pain and a loss of self. The greatest cost to a person is not losing opinions or productivity, but losing the ability to know, understand, and explain with clarity. This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I love. This is what I live for. Noise not only steals your time, but also steals your identity. My own personal reflection from silence from several years ago. The difference between living as a hermit and post-seminary. For 4 years, I lived in silence and solitude alone with God as a hermit. Within a few years, I went from living as a hermit to attending a diocesan seminary. The stark differences have had profound long-term effects on me. From the years and months of God detaching me from the world and taking me out of the constant stream of noise, only to be put back in it 24/7. Post-seminary detoxification took several years with and through the healing from the damage that was done. Looking back on those years after going through intense extreme detoxification from the noise twice, I understand and see clearly, without question or confusion, the difference between the quiet of silence and solitude and being in the constant stream of the world's noise. So what can we do practically? Well, noise is not defeated by willpower. It is defeated by a well-disciplined, structured routine. Start slowly detoxing from the noise. You will feel restless at first. It does not mean failure, but rather a sign of withdrawal and detoxification. Observe how it feels and how your mind and body respond. Slowly increase the duration of silence as you can. Remember, turning off the noise is detoxifying from instant gratification, not feeding it. It is a step-at-a-time process with no set timeline. The practice from today's show is a daily, no-input block of time to turn off the noise. Start with 15 minutes and spend more time as you grow comfortable in silence and solitude. Turn off all the noise. No music, no screens, news, or commentary. Just you alone with silence. Take a walk alone. Get a journal and write. When your mind and body are always on full throttle in a constant state of rage, fear, confusion, stress, and anxiety, you cannot think or have clarity. You are unable to make sound decisions for your well-being and the well-being of those closest to you. When you live in constant emotional rage and feed on instant gratification, it will result in long-term adverse effects on your mental health and nervous system. Human beings are body, mind, and soul, and not wired to live in a constant state of stress, fed on instant gratification. Detoxifying from the noise is a process that takes time to learn, live in, and get used to. It takes time, patience, and it is not instant or one and done. Always keep in mind that modern culture sees silence and solitude as complete contradictions, voids to be filled. Through the secular lens, clarity is built in stillness. Through the Catholic Christian lens, God is present. But it is up to you to decide to make room for him in your life, not just when it is convenient or when you feel like it. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is honesty in truth, and where a human being becomes whole. As we close, here is a summary and points for self-reflection. Noise is not neutral. Over time, the constant stream of noise trains you. It trains your attention to fracture, your emotions to spike, your mind to react, and your soul to grow restless and longing. If you feel scattered, cynical, fatigued, numb, or constantly on edge, you are being conditioned. When the noise is left unchecked, it slowly and steadily fractures attention, making it difficult to focus. It trains reactivity so you respond on emotional impulse rather than with discernment. It dulls clarity, making truth feel distant and everything an opinion. Noise fuels anxiety and agitation, keeping your nervous system on edge. It reshapes your identity until you forget what you actually believe and value. It erodes relationships by feeding resentment, suspicion, and quick judgments. It mentally exhausts you, your interior life, leaving you tired, numb, and feeling disconnected and void of any meaning. Thank you for joining me. Please join me for my next show, When the Noise Stops, What You Hear First. If something stirred a thought, a question, a suggestion, or a disagreement, leave a comment. Please subscribe and hit the like button. Share with someone who needs quiet, clarity, and truth without the noise. You can find my book, coaching details, and additional resources on my website. Until next time, write this down and remind yourself often throughout your day. Just because the world around me may rage in chaos, confusion, and insanity does not mean I have to. Take a few minutes and sit down. Take a long, deep breath. Relax. Be still. Quiet in the moment. And feel it. Just one moment at a time. My name is Jerry. This is A Former Hermit and a Podcast. Thank you.